today we have running for district attorney and working in the county attorney's office, Ms. Nancy Casas. We appreciate you being here today. We're very honored that you're here. Thank you for everything that you do for the community. And I just, at this time, I just really, really want to know, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for the invitation of being here, of inviting me to be here at this space. I'm Nancy Casas. I'm born and raised in El Paso. I went to Hanks High School. I went to community college. I went to UTEP. And then after UTEP, I went to the University of Iowa and then came back. So local, from here, belong here, and I wanted to come back to be here. And actually, one of the reasons why I wanted to go to law school is because after I graduated from UTEP, I worked at Legal Aid as a paralegal. And I really liked helping people. I felt like, okay, this is what I want to do. But I realized that I needed more than where I was, right? So that's when I decided to go to law school. And from there, I went to law school. I went to the University of Iowa, and I came back to help the people of El Paso. And I did exactly what I had planned to do, exactly what I had set out to do. I came back to El Paso, and I worked at Legal Aid as an attorney, again, helping the community. So exactly what prompted me to go to law school, I ended up coming back and doing the exact same thing.
That's awesome, and I'm a Hanks graduate too. So
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yes,
oh, there
this is
you
working
go.
out perfect right here.
What year?
93.
Oh, I'm class of 92.
You
well,
see?
Actually, I should have been class of 93, but I graduated high school in 3 years. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Where was your feeder school?
Well, I actually went to Parkland before, and then I came from Arizona, so I just kept moving to different locations based on sports, and then my parents too, we always moved, so I grew up in East LA, so I know what it is to move on up. And for those out there, I'm in the law enforcement part, Ms. Casas is in the attorney part. So how important do you think it is for law enforcement and for the district attorney's, county attorney's office to work together?
It's very important. It's very important. So that's one of the things that I learned when I started working at the DA's office, especially when I got put in this specialty unit. I was a misdemeanor attorney, then I was a felony attorney, but I was then put in the specialty unit when I was in the narcotic task force, and I was there for 7 years. And in the narcotics task force, you work super close with the detectives that are preparing that type of investigation and that prepare the cases to you. And so I realized how important it was to be in court and right away go back and give feedback to the law enforcement to let them know, like, this worked, this didn't work, you need to improve here. The judge ruled this way, and explain to the officer why. So the officer understood what they would have to do when they were out there in the street. And so that's super important. And I think when I was a misdemeanor line attorney, I didn't know that. It wasn't until I got into that specialty unit. But that's a skill that I learned, and I have then incorporated throughout my career. So from there, I went to the university. I was a prosecutor overseas in the European Union in the rule of law in the country of Kosovo. Do you know where Kosovo is?
Yes.
I didn't know until I applied, but it's in Europe. It was one of the Yugoslavian countries. It was one of the 5 Yugoslavian countries that broke off. It was in war with Serbia. So I went when it had been declared, when Kosovo declared independence. It was 3 years after their declaration of independence. So I was there to implement the rule of law. But that was also one of the important things, was trying to make sure that the prosecutors were talking to the law enforcement and that there was working collaboration between the two in order for it to become a more efficient system. So in the implementation of the rule of law, that was a core part of what had to happen. So since then, I came back and I was a trainer in the rule of law mission in the Latin American countries. So I traveled to Panama, Peru, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and it was also to teach prosecutors and law enforcement how to advocate in a system that is modeled to ours.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So then when I came back to the DA's office, in my second round, I wasn't placed in a courtroom. I was placed in a more administrative, to what was only going to be a 6-month assignment. I ended up being there 8 years because I did a really good job in that part. But in my second assignment, I was the one who prepared all the cases. I was in the team that prepared the cases to get them ready to go to court. And that's also when I started seeing that we could work more closely with law enforcement, and I actually developed training programs in order for me to go out to all law enforcement agencies to try and improve the law enforcement in their investigation and in their report writing skills. And then I also collaborated and implemented other topics as well, like search and seizure with family violence, trying to get the right prosecutors to come in and teach law enforcement. So I realized how important that was. The last administration, the one that in 2021 that came in, that ceased. Like there was no communication between the DA's office and law enforcement. And it was a true detriment to our justice system, because there has to be communication between all agencies, not just one, not just the other. We're not independent of each other. Yes, we are independent, but we still have to collaborate and work together. So I want to go back to be the
Yes.
district attorney so I can put that back into place.
And I also think that's very important because there's sometimes miscommunication, and when we don't get together or we don't talk, there are some things that you all expect and some things that we need to do. And have you seen things evolve over the last century, as from when you started to now? What have you seen that has changed a lot?
Well, in as far as working with law enforcement, right, and collaborating. Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of my pet peeves when I was working at the DA's office is where prosecutors in our office would turn around and say, these law enforcement, they don't know how to write these police reports. And I'd always be like, well, did we tell them what we wanted on here? Because, like, we're not training them.
Yes.
And the idea was, well, they're being trained at the academy, like, they should know.
Uh-huh.
But at the academy, you're being trained by other law enforcement based on their experiences, right, of what they had.
Yes.
And so that's when I started going out to all law enforcement agencies. Every law enforcement agency in El Paso, I went out and started talking to them and trying to develop this better understanding of how to write police reports, what we need in the investigations, what to focus on, or to really broaden their scope. Because I think sometimes as an officer, you get used to doing things a certain way, and then when you get to court, we realize that we needed a little bit broader of a scope. And so I was there to try and get that information to you. And definitely saw a difference from when I first started to when I finished that program before I left the DA's office. I will tell you, I got a lot of compliments from defense attorneys who would turn around and say, well, no wonder these cops are writing these reports. Like, they have everything you need in there. And I'm like, good, that's exactly what you need.
Yeah, and we thank you for that, because we in law enforcement need to know exactly that other scope of where the report goes, what needs to be there, all the evidence, everything that's involved, and I think that's very important now. I think that was something that was missing, and we appreciate that, the hard work that you've done, and I know a lot comes into it based on the experience from, being overseas and everything that you've learned, everything all comes together. Have you seen social media affect now cases, or now that everybody's using their cell phones, everybody's now using social media for everything? It's changed the scope of how we prosecute cases now. How have you seen that evolve?
Yes, so definitely seen and actually even before a lot of the social media, but I used to tell officers, when you're out there, everyone's watching.
Yes.
Everyone's watching. Even if you're somewhere where you think no one is watching, someone's watching. They're going through the windows, everybody has a smartphone now, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, even I tell a story that I was I was a witness in a collision, right? And one of the things that I found interesting was that both parties came out of their vehicles, and they were people who were older than me, right? Who came out, brought out their smartphones, and the first thing they did was started videoing the other person. And I said, that's what's different now.
Yes.
That is what's different. This was before body cams. This is before what became standard issued for law enforcement. I was like, now people will have that. So if you're in neighborhoods, you're going to have the neighborhood watch ladies, right? Or gentlemen, that are going to be looking through their windows, and they're going to be pulling their smartphones, and they're going to be taking video. So yes, absolutely. I think you're being watched much more carefully all the time, which was not the case before the smartphones. I mean, it was very random when somebody maybe had some sort of videoing equipment or photographs to be able to take photographs. But now everybody has a cell phone, has a smartphone pretty
Yes.
much, and can videotape and video you at any time.
Yes. And body cams. How do you feel about body cams?
Right.
Do you feel that they help your cases a lot?
Yes, because it also helps the officer and it helps the community at large too. Because sometimes the officer writes what happens and people are like, there is no way that that could have happened. And then they watch the video and they're like, oh yeah, that did happen. So it works for all of the community.
I agree with you. I believe that the body cams also hold you accountable too and it could go both ways, Sometimes it could go good, sometimes it could go bad, but at least it's a complete description of what's going on. Let's talk about you overseas.
Okay.
What's the difference that you saw from everything you learned over there to what's done here in the U.S.? What would be a big difference?
Oh, there was a lot of differences. So something was similar that I guess coming from a border city that wasn't so difficult was the translating, which I thought that was interesting because a lot of my colleagues who were not used to having a lot of things translated really had a difficult time with that because everything's done in 3 languages in that country. So it's a different rule of law that they have than we have here, but and over there in the European Union, you also do what is called best practices because it was under the rule of law. And so you had different countries come into place, and so you're trying to work with all these power countries and come up with the best practice, what would be best for that country to work.
And were there stricter penalties overseas or about the same, or how would you rate it?
They had stricter penalties in some areas. It was a country that does not have a high economic base, and so you end up having a lot of crimes that are because of economics, right? So you have a lot of thefts, you have a lot of corruption, and other issues, right? They had other issues, but that was a lot of what we saw and what they had.
And I know you're heavily involved in the community and nonprofits and going out there in walks and helping out as much as you can. Explain a little bit about what you do when it comes to the community engagement and partnerships.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big fan of El Paso. I'm a huge ambassador of El Paso. I think it's getting to know El Paso, you realize how much we have to offer. And so part of that, I have been big in organizations throughout my whole career. So I started off like being a board member back in 2000 with Las Americas Immigrant and Advocacy Center. I've been a part of the Boys and Girls Club. I went to Hanks, right?
Yeah.
So when I started becoming an attorney, I met an attorney who was with a Jewish background. And I said, I know that there's a Jewish community here in El Paso. I'm not familiar with it. How can I best get to know this community? Just so I can have at least knowledge about it. And so I ended up joining the Jewish Federation and the Jewish Family Services Board as a board member, just so I can get to know a little bit more about the city or about the other citizens who are here in El Paso that I just did not have an opportunity to meet ahead of time. And so throughout my career, I have picked different organizations that I can feel like I could be a part of. And some are social, some are more, giving to the community. Like I was part of the El Paso Bicycle Club, but that's still an important club because they're out there and they're educating people on how to ride bikes and giving people the space and the safety to be able to ride as a community. Because sometimes it is difficult to ride your bike by yourself. These cars are not so not so fair to the bicyclist. So
Yeah.
sometimes riding in a group will help. And so, I've been a part of their organization as well. I did leave and then come back, and now that I've been back in El Paso, I've joined the Lions Club, the Rotary Club. I actually belong to the Downtown Rotary Club, but I also an honorary member of the Zaragoza Rotary Club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so since then, lately I also started I'm a board member for a Rotary, the Salvation Army, and the Young Women's Leadership Academy, which I think that's very important because it's trying to get women to go out and get educated and make sure that they're ready to and be prepared in this world. And so I've always think that that's important as well.
And going into that topic, I think it's very important for, especially somebody like you, to be a role model for these young women. What advice would you give these young women that want to become attorneys or even to be top professionals and business women? Because I know it can't be easy sometimes. What advice do you have for these young girls that are aspiring to be where you're at right now?
Right. I would say reach out and talk to mentors. You really do need to reach out and talk to people to see what they're doing and how they got there, because there's not one path to get here. There's a lot of paths to get here. And I was very fortunate that I've had some really good mentors throughout my education and through my professional career that have helped me, kind of guide me to where I'm at. And I think as a woman, as a woman who maybe does not have a lot of resources, sometimes we don't have that, right? I didn't have any attorneys growing up. I didn't know what an attorney did. I wasn't sure, like, if that could be something that I could actually achieve and accomplish and want to be. It wasn't until one of my mentors said, why don't you go become an intern and see if you like it? And that's how I started, right? I was an intern at Legal Aid, and I was like, hey, I like this. And I surrounded myself with a lot of attorneys that guided me and helped me, and I saw what they did, and I was like, okay, I can be like them. I know there's the slogan, like Iris Lopez has, Mija, yes, you can. The Joint Military has one, if you see her, you can be her. Ms. Huerta always says, si se puede, right? I think all of that is important.
Yes.
You really do have to reach out and surround yourself with like-minded people because it is hard. So you have to surround yourself with people who are doing just as
Yes.
much as you or more, and you can sit down and do better, right? I've read that if you are sitting next to a high-achieving person, it makes you strive to be a high achiever.
Yes.
If you surround yourself with people who are not, then it also drags you down as well. So surrounding yourself with people, because sometimes I feel like I don't do as much as other people because I surround myself with people who are doing more. They are on boards, and they're high professional women who are supervisors, who are high skilled. And here I am, throughout my career looking at them going, okay, if they could do it, I could do it, and I can do it more, right? So I would say, one, always get a mentor that will help you professionally or through your education, because sometimes we also need help there. Like, what classes do you take?
Yes.
How do you get there? So you need mentors in your education. You need mentors in your professional field. And then I would say, find somebody who will help mentor you financially. Because I think sometimes we don't have those skills of learning how to save money, how to invest on money, and you need to sit down and really do well, because if once you start making that money, or even a little bit, you need to start learning how to save it, how to invest it, and how to make it grow for you so that later on it'll become to your benefit.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. Everything that you mentioned, because, I coach girls softball, and
Right.
I have daughters, and I think that influence and having other people push you forward is very important.
I agree.
You always talk about it's who you hang out with,
Right,
and
absolutely.
make sure that you surround yourself with great people, that are
Right.
going to help you along the process.
Right.
And for you running for district attorney, what are the issues that are so important to you, and what's the reason why you're running?
Yes. And let me go back and just put one more thing for
Yes,
the
of
for the
course.
young women, because and actually this just came up today or yesterday. I would also say you have to learn how to find a balance and something that keeps you mentally sane, right? Because it's also your mental health. Because I recently have been mentoring somebody who high achieving. Actually, I have three right now that I'm mentoring, and all of them are having issues because we're doing so much. And it's like, how do you do so much and still stay sane? So it's also learning your coping skills, and it's also being able to reach out and ask for help. Because I think sometimes we don't want to, or we're afraid to, or we see all these other, right? We surround ourselves with all
Yes,
these people who are high achieving, and then you think you can't make it there. And so recently, this past weekend, I ran into one of my mentees that, kudos for her, she reached out, said she needed help, and the family is working on that to make sure that you can find your coping skills to be sure you are working and being able to get ahead for the future. So that's also very hard. I mean, I just think we have so many demands for getting out there, pushing ourselves and making
yes.
sure, but we need to be sure that we're doing that. Sorry, I
No, no, no.
thought that was
And going
important.
back into that, no, which is good, is because that was another topic I was going to get into, is that
Okay.
how do you separate your work life from your regular life? Because I know it's hard sometimes. Where do you take yourself and what do you do to relax and to take that stress away?
So one of the things that I had to learn is, right, I mean, you have to find what it is that is healthy, right? Because
Yes.
too many, in my profession, too many people end up doing things that are not so healthy for
Yes.
us. I have learned that for me, it's doing a little bit of exercise. Especially after a stressful day, it's going to the gym, it's taking a walk. So I hike, bike, and swim. I end up doing weights. And even now that I'm really busy, I realize that I have to figure out how to keep doing that in order for me to keep that mental health. And so that is part of the conversation we had this weekend when I was talking to her, is just trying to figure out how do you keep that when we're so balanced, but you have to realize what it is important for you. And I realized that for me, I need to swim. I need to swim once a week for me to stay mentally sane, for me to be able to come forward. And so on my schedule, I still pencil that in. That's once a week that I go swimming.
And I used to run the search and rescue team, so I was always up in the mountain. I see that you do
I
hiking.
do a lot of hiking. Actually, that helps me out a lot. But hiking right now takes up a little bit more time, and so that isn't always so easy. But I was able to do hiking and networking, so I combined a couple of things together, so that worked out really good. And we have another one coming up in October, and I think that's great because it also helps people get to know me, who I am. I'm a
Yes.
Texas master naturalist. I, volunteer with the Parks and Wildlife. And I also like showing people how these mountains are so beautiful. And sometimes
Absolutely.
we're intimidated or we're scared of going hiking, right? Because we don't know. And so going with somebody who can just be like, look, it's doable. You can come out here and enjoy a hike, and you can come back and do it on your own once you lead a guided one. So that's worked out really cool.
And it's perfect because I always tell people when you get lost, you always get back on path. And once you're back on path, your life is so
Yeah.
much better.
Oh
So,
no, yes, it's true. Actually, the mountains have there's a lot of lessons in the mountains, to tell you the truth. And when I go hiking and I'm guiding the hikes, I kind of tell people, our mountains are a little different than other mountains, right? When you go to other mountains, you have the beautiful green because you have all these trees. And I go, and maybe our mountains are not, they look brown and you start looking at them. But when you start hiking and you see the small beauty that we have, it reminds you how, no matter how difficult life is, you have these small, beautiful things that make it worth going. So all of a sudden you're walking and you'll see this butterfly out of nowhere. And you're just like, wow. Or you see the cacti bloom and you're just like, that is really cool, right? Because, and it also makes you realize how much you have to survive, but it is worth those small moments.
yes, and that's exactly what you're talking about when it comes to children and, mentoring them and making sure that they grow up. And every child goes through things, but it's the overall result that you're talking about.
Right.
And we appreciate everything that you do to mentorship these young ladies to try to get them to stay on path and to
Right.
grow. And because I believe that every child deserves a chance to have that opportunity to grow, as you just mentioned. And
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say the other lesson that the mountain tells you is that you're walking and you have to put one foot in front of the other to get somewhere, right? And sometimes we're so busy looking at the floor to make sure you don't fall over the rocks, but you really need to take a moment to look at the beauty of your surroundings. And I think that's the same thing in life. Sometimes we get so in our grind, in our routine of, we get up, we go to school, you're
Yes.
here, you're there, and then one foot in front of the other, which is important because that's going to get you there. But sometimes you just have to stand there, take a breather, and then just look around at all the beauty that we have, and that's when you enjoy the scenery.
absolutely. How important is family and friends to you?
Very important. Very important. Actually, I come from my mom has 9 brothers and sisters, and so a lot of family, a lot of cousins. My dad has 5, also a lot of family, a lot of cousins. In my mom's side of the family, I am the oldest in my generation, so definitely been putting some opening doors for many of my younger cousins to go forward, but all of them, just moving them and improving them. We talk about hiking, but all my cousins have all done a triathlon or a bike run because I've done triathlons and bikes. So I've trained them. I've done them with them. We've all have done something because I do think exercise is important, and,
Yes.
and sometimes we don't emphasize it enough. And so all my cousins have done something that has improved their health.
Well, I can tell you I've done the Baton Death March a couple times,
Yeah.
and 26.2 miles.
Yes.
And I can tell you one thing. I was hoping a scorpion would bite me because I was in so much pain. So if you're going to do anything like you're doing, stay in shape. Always make sure that you train for it, and don't go out there cold because you're going to be like me,
Yeah,
You're going to be
absolutely.
crying in the porta potties, wishing it was over. So
No, it's important, but it's important to still go out there and try it. And so, getting out there and also just inspiring people to keep doing it. So I love training with different people. I've, throughout the years have trained. I don't always do the triathlon, the race itself, but I've trained people along there and then have turned them on. Like this weekend, this Sunday, I was out there cheering my friends who were out in the Eagle in the Sun, who were participating. And so I've trained with them during the summertime. Just with the campaign, I just haven't had as much time as I would have liked to have actually done it. But I was there Sunday cheering them on because it's exciting to see what their accomplishments are.
And what have you learned through this campaign? I know it's difficult, and you got to push forward through everything. What's the biggest thing that you're learning through running for district attorney?
There's a lot of things, right? And actually, a lot of the lessons of the mountains have kind of trickled into everything we're doing. And it's, you still got to put one foot in front of the other. Every day, you still got to put one foot in front of the other. I still, putting one foot in front of the other. And yes, you start grinding. Like, I still work. I still have a full-time job. I still have to make sure that I am accomplishing everything that I need to as a county attorney. But then in the evenings, it's going out and meeting people and doing things and, participating in different activities. And so you're putting one foot in front of the other. But every now and then, I have to remember to just breathe and look at everything that I have around us and just enjoy. So enjoy my friendships, enjoy my family, enjoy the organizations or the activity that I'm in to do it. So it doesn't feel like you're just putting one foot in front of the other. So it's good reminders, those lessons that you learn kind of go into different areas of your life. And I would say that is one of the areas that I've learned.
And I think that's great, and I think everything that you've gone through, has made you to the point where you're at, because it takes a lot of courage to run for politics and to put yourself out there and to do the things that you have to, and not necessarily have to, to continue to do those things, but being the person that you are. And that's one thing that I see about you is that, you're genuine, and, you really care about El Paso, and you care about this community, and you've done it for a long time. And I know a lot of people out there truly appreciate and truly would be able to go off somebody like you and leading the next generation. What is very important to you right now running for district attorney? What's the reason why you're running for district attorney?
So the reason I'm running is because I saw that there were a lot of issues at the district attorney's office, the past elected administration. And when you saw something that you were a part of, and you know that you were a part of making sure it was efficient, right? So I had spent a span of 19 years. Remember, I was gone for 2. So I was actually working for 17 years, but a span of 19 years that I was there, building something that was being part of an agency that was efficient, part of an agency that moved cases, and then just saw it fall apart, or seeing it fall apart. It was just something where I was like, okay, I want to do something. What can I do? And then I sat down and thought, I have all this experience. And when the last elected did not keep me, and that was fine, I was fortunate and I found the job at the county attorney's office. Well, at the county attorney's office, I ended up doing general counsel work. So 19 years doing criminal law, and then I changed over to general counsel.
Yes.
But when I started deciding that I wanted to be the district attorney, I realized that actually helped broaden my scope even more than I had been. Because I had been in the courtrooms, right? Docket, handling motions to suppress, jury trials. And then I've done the implementation of the rule of law. I've done training. I've taught law enforcement and other prosecutors. And then I was part of like the administration part of the DA's office, and learning how things got to the DA's office from law enforcement, and also like how the programs work and our data entry systems, and part of the changes between one data system to another data system. And then I became in general counsel. So all of a sudden, like, now I understand like commissioner's court. I understand the budget. I understand grants. I understand how to write contracts, and the importance of making sure that the contracts are reviewed by the county attorney's office. And so by that time, I realized I have a lot that I could bring to an agency that needs help in gaining back its integrity and reestablishing itself in the efficiency that it was in, and improving it, right? Because there was always room to improve. And so it's not only going back and fixing it, but it's finding ways to improve it and make it better.
And I absolutely agree with you, because there's so much involved in cases that people just don't know about, starting from the law enforcement side to your side. And how important do you think that is for law enforcement officers to know the entire process from beginning all the way to the end?
It's important, because in that way they realize what the beginning part is when it ends. And I think if you don't understand that, then maybe you're just like, well, you don't realize. But then when you see how this police report, how your investigation starts, and how it continues on when we have motions to suppress, when we have jury trials, when we go into appeals, then you realize what it is that you're doing and building towards.
And I think that's absolutely important. I think collaboration, being together, everybody working together is so important. And
Yeah, I agree.
I really want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for your experience, for
Thank you.
talking about all the things that are important, and especially when it comes to young women and the importance of us growing the foundation and uplifting these girls to do so much better and
Absolutely.
succeeding in life.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important to make sure, one of the things in the campaign, I have volunteers who are UTEP students or have just graduated from UTEP, bright women. And it was very important to hear that one of the women told me, with all the networking events that you're taking us to, because I go to a lot of things, and sometimes I'm like, just show up with me, come with me, it'll help you, and it'll help me. And so she was like, at one of the networking events, she's like, I met somebody, I introduced her to somebody and we started talking, that eventually that led to her being a part of her first professional board. She's like, I don't know if I would have had that opportunity at this point, right? Because recent UTEP grad, already a part of a big organization and a board member of a big professional organization. And she's like, I thank you for that. And I'm like, okay, that's exactly what I'm here for. And so in the networking events, like, it's not only women who want to be lawyers, but it's business women. It's going out there and introducing and networking and connecting to everything that we have, and that's one of my strong suits that I have, is that I know a little bit of a lot.
Yes.
And I know a little bit of a lot of people. And so my friends are not the same demographic. I mean, so if you get to know my friends, it's not just all lawyers or no, actually I'll have a lawyer here, I have business person, I have a teacher, I have law enforcement, I have somebody who's a probation officer, just little bit, mom, stay-at-home mom, important.
Yep.
I mean, just a little bit of everything, but it's also learning how to connect those people to find the right connection that helps them out. So this way, whether it's to grow their business, whether it's to grow themselves personally, it's knowing. And so sometimes that's part of just being in the community and getting to know each other.
And for everybody out there, just so you know that one of the biggest reasons I wanted to bring Nancy Casas in is because she mentored to my daughter right away that my daughter was going to law school. She reached out, offered her phone number, offered her assistance, and that was out of the kindness of her heart, and I think that's the type of person that she is, and a biggest reason why I wanted to bring her onto this podcast also, and her insight and everything that she does for the community. I think we're here to make a difference in people's lives. We're here to educate and show different dynamics of everyone like you talked about, and I think that's important for this entire community to come together.
This is true. This is true. I appreciate that very much. I mean, those are all things that I want to bring into the DA's office as well, because I think once you go in there, how do you get that atmosphere to be able for it to work together? We got to recognize, retain, and recruit the talent that we have. And so it's going in there and being able to do that. So hopefully all the things that I've learned and have put into my life experience are things that I want to bring into the DA's office.
And the last thing I really wanted to talk about that, I wanted to bring up a little bit earlier is second chance. What do you think about these second chance programs? Because I'm a big advocate that people do deserve a second chance, and how do you feel about that?
Okay. So, yes. So I do think that people need to be held accountable for their actions. But I do think sometimes the accountability might be different, right? So especially when we're talking about a 17-year-old who's already considered an adult, and maybe their crime is not in your, I mean, we're not talking like heavy crimes, right?
Yes,
we're not talking like murders and aggravated
No,
assaults
we're
and
talking
things
about,
like that.
something
But
that's
maybe something a
rehabilitated.
little bit that is a stupid mistake that somebody made, right? And yes, maybe we need to turn around and be able to afford that opportunity for this young adult to be able to still be held accountable, but be given an opportunity to continue and succeed in life. This is also true of veterans, right? We also, for example, Veterans Court. So yes, I would be a proponent as well of following Veterans Court, because sometimes you have veterans who come back, have a little bit of a hard time adjusting, and commit some mistakes, but they have served our community and are members who are going to contribute to our community, but we also need to be sure that we hold them accountable, but give them an opportunity to be able to go forward. And
I think that's absolutely right. You're absolutely correct that you have to do things based on a case-to-case basis. And, having a county attorney here and then law enforcement here, stay out of trouble. I'm telling you that right now. Stay out of trouble, But be good. We believe in you all. Keep succeeding. Keep doing great. This is the Officer Mike G hour. Drop the mic hour with Mike G, and we appreciate you going here. Next week, we're going to have Dorothy Truex from Reynolds Homes, and look forward to a great podcast as we just had today. And thank you, Ms. Casas, for being here.
No, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes.